A brave black boy stood before the judge and declared, "That's not my mom." The courtroom froze, but what he revealed next uncovered a heartbreaking truth about racism and identity. By the end, the judge was in tears, and his final words left everyone in shock. This story will challenge everything you thought you knew about justice and family. The courtroom buzzed with a dull murmur, as people shuffled papers and whispered amongst themselves. The faint tapping of the judge's gavel brought the room to order, but the tension in the air was palpable. Sitting at a small table in the front, 8-year-old Noah Johnson clutched his hands tightly, his knuckles white against his dark skin. His wide, tear-brimmed eyes darted around the room, searching for comfort. Beside him, a stern woman in a tailored suit, his court-appointed attorney, whispered something to him, but Noah's gaze was fixed on the woman sitting across the room. The woman was pale, her sharp features framed by straight blonde hair. She sat rigid in her seat, a forced smile on her lips as she occasionally glanced at Noah. To anyone else, she might have seemed like a mother desperate to reunite with her child. But Noah knew better. He swallowed hard, his small chest rising and falling, as if trying to summon courage. "Next case," the judge called, her voice firm but kind. Judge Marianne Carter, known for her fairness, adjusted her glasses and scanned the docket. "We're here for the custody case of Noah Johnson. Will the petitioner please step forward?" The blonde woman rose, smoothing her skirt as she walked to the stand. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "I'm here to bring my son, Noah, back home where he belongs. He's been through so much already, and it's time we reunited as a family." Noah's heart pounded in his chest. "Son?" He wanted to scream. She wasn't his mum. She wasn't even close. Memories of his real mom flashed in his mind. Her warm smile, her hugs that felt like a fortress, and the soft lullabies she sang at night. Noah gritted his teeth, his small fists trembling. The judge turned her attention to Noah. "Young man," she said gently, her voice softening as she addressed him. "Do you understand what's happening today?" Noah's attorney nudged him to stand. The boy rose slowly, his legs wobbly, but his resolve strong. He looked up at the judge, his voice small but steady. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "And do you have anything you'd like to say before we proceed?" Judge Carter asked, tilting her head as if to encourage him. Noah hesitated, his gaze shifting back to the woman at the stand. Her eyes met his, but there was no warmth in them, only calculation. He took a deep breath, his tiny hands gripping the edge of the table for support. Then, in a voice louder than anyone expected, he declared, "That's not my mom." The courtroom erupted into chaos. Gasps and whispers filled the room as everyone turned to stare at the boy. The blonde woman's face paled, her composure cracking for just a moment before she forced a laugh. "He's just confused, Your Honor," she said quickly. "The poor child's been through so much. He doesn't know what he's saying." But Noah wasn't done. He stepped forward, tears streaming down his face as he pointed at the woman. "She's not my mom, my real mom. My real mom is gone, and she doesn't even care. She just wants to take me away, but she doesn't love me." The room fell silent again, the weight of Noah's words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Even Judge Carter seemed momentarily stunned, her pen frozen mid-air. She leaned forward, her expression soft but serious. "Noah," she said gently, "can you tell me what you mean? Take your time." Noah wiped his tears with his sleeve, his voice cracking as he tried to explain. "She's lying," he whispered. "She's not my mom. She just wants me so she can—" He choked on his words, unable to finish. Judge Carter turned her sharp gaze to the woman at the stand. "We'll hear from the child in detail before proceeding further," she said firmly. "This is a serious matter." As Noah sat down, his shoulders trembling, the courtroom knew one thing. Whatever secret this boy was holding on to, it was about to change everything. Noah's small frame seemed to shrink as he sat back down, his head low, his fingers fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. The air in the courtroom was thick, heavy with anticipation. All eyes were on him, but he could feel only the cold gaze of the woman who claimed to be his mother. It burned into him, like a warning to stay silent. Judge Carter's firm voice broke the silence. "Ms. Reynolds," she addressed the blonde woman, Do you have anything to say in response to the child's claim? The woman's forced smile returned, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Your Honor, Noah is just a little boy. He's confused and scared. Losing his mother has been incredibly hard on him, and… She paused, letting out a small, rehearsed sigh. I believe he's lashing out because he doesn't know how to process what's happening. I'm the only family he has left. Noah's head snapped up, his wide eyes brimming with anger and grief. You're lying, he blurted out, his voice trembling but fierce. You don't even know me. You've never cared about me, not even once. Ms. Reynolds flinched but quickly recovered, her expression morphing into one of faux concern. You see what I mean, Your Honor? She said smoothly, turning to the judge. He's been through so much trauma. All I want is to give him the stability he needs, a safe home, a fresh start. But Noah's words had struck a chord with the judge. Judge Carter leaned forward, resting her chin on her folded hands as she studied the boy. Noah, she said gently, I know this is very difficult, but can you tell me more? Why do you feel this way about Ms. Reynolds? Noah hesitated, his small chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. He looked at his attorney, who gave him an encouraging nod. Slowly he stood again, his knees trembling beneath him. She's not my mum, he said softly, his voice cracking. She's just pretending. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. Pretending? Noah nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. He clenched his fists as he forced himself to continue. My real mum loved me. She hugged me every day and told me I was her little superhero. She made pancakes with smiley faces for breakfast. She sang to me when I couldn't sleep. But she's gone now. His voice broke completely, and he wiped his face with his sleeve. Ms. Reynolds sat stiffly, her jaw tightening as she tried to maintain her composure. Noah took a deep, shaky breath and continued, his voice growing stronger. This lady, she never cared about me or my mum. She only showed up after my mum died, saying she wanted to take care of me. But she doesn't even know what I like. She doesn't know my favorite color, my favorite food, nothing. She just wants to take me so she can… He trailed off, struggling to find the words. Judge Carter leaned in. So she can what, Noah? Noah looked down, his voice barely above a whisper. So she can get money. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Ms. Reynolds's face went pale, her carefully crafted mask beginning to crack. That's a very serious accusation, the judge said, her tone sharpening. She turned her gaze to Ms. Reynolds. Do you have a response to this claim? Ms. Reynolds stammered, her words faltering for the first time. Your Honor, I don't know where he's getting this from. I've always had his best interests at heart. I would never… But Judge Carter held up a hand, silencing her. We'll get to the bottom of this. I'll be requesting a full review of your background, as well as your financial motives for this custody request. Till then, I'll reserve judgment. Noah's attorney spoke up for the first time. Your Honor, we have documentation that supports Noah's claims. It shows a pattern of behavior that suggests Ms. Reynolds' motives are not in the child's best interest. Judge Carter nodded, her expression unreadable. Submit that documentation immediately. In the meantime, we will recess until I can review all evidence. This case is far too important to rush. As the gavel struck, the tension in the room seemed to explode. Ms. Reynolds hurriedly left the stand, her polished demeanor now visibly shaken. Noah sat back down, his tiny frame trembling with the weight of what he'd just revealed. His attorney leaned down to him, her voice soft. You were very brave, Noah. I'm proud of you. But Noah didn't feel brave. He felt tired and scared. He clung to the memory of his real mom, her laugh, her hugs, her love, hoping it would give him the strength to keep fighting, because deep down, he knew this wasn't over. The hallway outside the courtroom was a chaotic blur of hushed whispers and pointed stares. Reporters and onlookers gathered, their curiosity sparked by the explosive accusations that had just unfolded. Noah sat on a wooden bench, his small hands clasped tightly together. He stared at the tiled floor, his legs dangling over the edge, feeling more alone than ever. Beside him, his attorney, Ms. Green, gently placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, Noah, she said softly. Telling the truth is never easy, but it's always important. Noah nodded, but his heart felt heavy. He wasn't sure the truth was enough to make the bad people go away. Memories of Ms. Reynolds's cold stares and sharp words swirled in his mind. He'd heard her late at night, on the phone, laughing about how much money she'd get once everything was finalized. Noah didn't understand all of it, but he knew enough. She didn't care about him. Across the hallway, Ms. Reynolds paced angrily, her phone pressed tightly to her ear. She threw a sharp glance toward Noah, and for a moment, their eyes met. Her lips twisted into a forced smile before she turned away, resuming her conversation. Noah couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could tell from her wild hand gestures that she was losing control. Ms. Green knelt down in front of Noah, breaking his thoughts. Noah, do you feel ready to tell the judge everything when she asks you again? I know it's hard, but the more we can show her, the better we can protect you. Noah hesitated, then whispered, What if she doesn't believe me? Ms. Green's eyes softened. The judge is smart, Noah. She'll see the truth, and I'll be right there with you the whole time, okay? Noah nodded again, his chest tightening. He wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered in his heart. Just then, the heavy doors to the judge's chambers opened, and Judge Carter stepped into the hallway. She carried a file in her hands, her expression unreadable. She looked toward Noah, her gaze steady but kind. Noah, she called gently, can I speak with you in my chambers? Ms. Green stood, offering Noah a reassuring smile. I'll come with you, all right? Noah took a deep breath and slid off the bench. As they followed the judge down the hall, the weight of the moment pressed down on him. Inside the chambers, the atmosphere felt different, quieter, safer. The room was filled with bookshelves, photos, and a desk cluttered with papers and a mug that read, Justice, one case at a time. Judge Carter gestured for Noah and Ms. Green to sit in the chairs across from her desk. Noah, she began, her voice softer than it had been in the courtroom. I wanted to talk to you in here because I know how scary it can be to speak in front of so many people. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting his. I want you to feel safe to tell me whatever you need to. Can you do that? Noah fidgeted in his seat, glancing at Ms. Green, who gave him a small nod. Slowly he began to speak. She doesn't care about me, Noah said, his voice barely above a whisper. She only wants me so she can get the money. I heard her say it. Judge Carter's brows furrowed. What did you hear her say, Noah? Can you tell me? Noah swallowed hard. She said once she gets me, she'll get the money from my mum's will. His voice cracked as he spoke the last word, tears welling in his eyes. Ms. Green interjected gently. Your Honor, Noah's mother had a small life insurance policy and a savings account designated for his care. The total isn't much, but it's enough that someone with ill intentions might see it as a reason to gain custody. Judge Carter nodded solemnly, her face darkening as she made notes. And Ms. Reynolds is listed as a beneficiary? Ms. Green confirmed. She had herself listed after Noah's mother's passing, using documents we're prepared to contest as forged. Noah looked at Judge Carter, his tear-filled eyes pleading. Please don't let her take me, he whispered. She's not my mum. My real mum wouldn't want me to go with her. The judge leaned back in her chair, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. Thank you for telling me, Noah. You're very brave, and I promise you, I'll do everything I can to make sure you're safe. For the first time, Noah felt a small flicker of hope, but the battle wasn't over yet. The courtroom was silent when the gavel struck again, signaling the session's resumption. Noah sat next to Ms. Green, his heart thumping in his chest. Across the room, Ms. Reynolds adjusted her blazer, her face carefully composed, though her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. The judge entered with an air of quiet authority, her gaze sharp and unwavering. Before we continue, I've reviewed additional evidence submitted by the child's counsel, Judge Carter began, her voice steady but firm. What I've seen raises serious concerns about Ms. Reynolds' motives in this case. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Ms. Reynolds stiffened, her expression flickering with nervousness. Ms. Green rose from her seat. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to call a witness to support Noah's claims. Judge Carter nodded. Proceed. The door opened, and a woman with tired but kind eyes entered the courtroom. It was Ms. Williams, a social worker who had been assigned to Noah's case after his mother's passing. She carried a stack of files, her professional demeanor hiding the emotional toll this case had taken on her. Ms. Williams, Ms. Green began, can you tell the court about your observations regarding Ms. Reynolds's interactions with Noah? Ms. Williams adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. During my visits, I noticed that Ms. Reynolds showed little interest in Noah's well-being beyond superficial matters. She would often talk about the legal proceedings and the financial implications. But when it came to Noah's emotional needs, she was dismissive. Noah shifted in his seat, feeling both validated and exposed as Ms. Williams spoke. Ms. Green pressed further. Did Ms. Reynolds ever mention the funds left by Noah's mother? Yes, Ms. Williams replied without hesitation. In fact, during one of my visits, Ms. Reynolds asked me how soon the funds could be transferred to her if she were granted custody. She expressed frustration that the process was taking so long. Gasps filled the room as Ms. Reynolds' carefully constructed facade began to crumble. She shot a glare at Ms. Williams, but the social worker remained calm and composed. Ms. Green turned to Judge Carter. Your Honor, we've also submitted evidence that Ms. Reynolds falsified documents to have herself listed as a beneficiary to Noah's mother's life insurance policy. This was done without Noah's mother's knowledge or consent. Judge Carter's expression hardened. She flipped through the documents in front of her, her jaw tightening as she read. Ms. Reynolds, she said, her tone cutting through the tension like a knife. Do you have any response to these allegations? Ms. Reynolds stood, her voice shaking but defiant. Your Honor, this is outrageous. These claims are completely unfounded. I only want what's best for Noah. I'm the closest thing he has to family, and I'm trying to honor his mother's wishes. Judge Carter's eyes narrowed. Ms. Reynolds, the evidence presented tells a very different story. It suggests that your motives are not centered on Noah's best interests, but rather on personal financial gain. No, Ms. Reynolds protested, her voice rising. That's not true. He's just a child. He doesn't know what he's saying. But before the judge could respond, Noah's small voice cut through the room. I know exactly what I'm saying. All eyes turned to him as he stood, his face flushed with emotion. You're lying, he said, pointing at Ms. Reynolds. You don't care about me. You never cared about my mom either. You just want the money. Tears streamed down his face as he looked directly at Judge Carter. Please don't make me go with her. I want to stay where people love me. I want to stay safe. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Ms. Reynolds sat down abruptly, her face pale, while Judge Carter leaned forward, her expression softening as she addressed Noah. Thank you, Noah, the judge said gently. You've been incredibly brave today. I promise you, I'll make sure your voice is heard. Judge Carter turned her attention back to Ms. Reynolds, her tone growing firm again. Given the evidence presented and the testimony heard today, I am issuing an immediate order to halt any custody proceedings involving Ms. Reynolds. This court will also be recommending a full investigation into her actions. The weight of her words seemed to crush Ms. Reynolds, who slumped in her seat, defeated. Noah let out a shaky breath, relief washing over him like a wave. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt safe. The courtroom was still as Judge Carter's final words echoed. Noah sat in his chair, his small hands gripping the sides as a wave of relief and emotion crashed over him. Ms. Green leaned down, her voice soft and steady. It's over, Noah. You're safe now. Noah blinked up at her, tears forming again. Not of fear this time, but of relief. He looked over at Ms. Reynolds, who sat frozen in her seat, her face a mix of disbelief and anger. For so long he had feared her. Her cold words, her fake smiles, the way she treated him like a burden rather than a child. But now, as he watched her being escorted out of the courtroom by security, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Judge Carter stood and addressed the room, her tone softer than before. This case has reminded me of the importance of listening to the voices of the most vulnerable among us, our children. Noah, your courage today has shown us all the power of truth, even when it's difficult to speak. Noah nodded, his lips trembling, but he didn't say anything. He didn't have to. As the courtroom emptied, Ms. Green guided Noah out into the hallway, where Ms. Williams was waiting. The social worker knelt down to Noah's level, her kind eyes meeting his. You were so brave in there, Noah. Your mom would be so proud of you. The mention of his mother brought a fresh wave of tears, but this time, they were accompanied by a small, genuine smile. I miss her, he whispered. Ms. Williams placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. I know you do. And she loved you more than anything. That's why she wanted you to be safe, Ms. Green chimed in. And you will be. I've already spoken with Ms. Williams about finding the right home for you, somewhere you'll feel loved and cared for. Noah hesitated. Like a new family, Ms. Williams nodded. Yes, but it doesn't mean you'll forget your mum. Everything she taught you, everything she gave you, it's all still here. She tapped her fingers gently on his chest. For the first time in what felt like forever, Noah felt a small glimmer of hope. He looked at Ms. Green, then at Ms. Williams. Do you promise? He asked quietly. Ms. Green smiled warmly. I promise, Noah. You're going to be okay. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change, but for once, it was the kind of change that felt good. Noah was placed with a foster family, the Thompsons, who lived in a cozy home filled with laughter and warmth. They welcomed Noah with open arms, never pushing him to talk, but always making sure he knew he was safe. The first night in his new room, Noah sat on the bed, holding the only photograph he had of his mom. He traced her face with his finger, tears sliding down his cheeks. I hope you can see me, Mom, he whispered. I hope you know I'm okay. As he placed the photo on the nightstand, a knock came at the door. It was Mrs. Thompson, her kind face peeking in. Everything all right, sweetheart? Noah nodded. Yeah, I think so. She smiled and stepped inside, placing a soft blanket at the foot of his bed. Good night, Noah. We're so happy you're here. For the first time in a long while, Noah felt the ache in his chest start to ease. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still memories to heal from, fears to overcome, but for the first time, he felt like he wasn't alone. As he lay back on the pillow, staring up at the ceiling, he whispered to himself, she'd want me to be happy. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Noah believed he could be.